in 1937 at Yale, Jung said, the new man must bear the burden of the shadow consciously, for such a man knows that whatever is wrong in the world is in himself. The meditation is a really good practice for getting in touch with what we're hiding. You know, I think a lot of the work that you talk about within EVRYMAN is about connecting to our bodies. And for us as men, we tend to close off in the front of our bodies, right? So think about when you get really angry, you get really anxious, you're pissed off at your partner, you're frustrated at work. What tends to happen is we feel that energy in the front of our body and it closes off our heart. And for many men, they store a tremendous amount behind their heart as a sort of shield, as a sort of protection mechanism. So sometimes just doing that little meditation of what is my heart carrying, right? What am I carrying emotionally into this call? Am I carrying frustration in my heart? Am I carrying fears? Am I carrying anxiousness? And then what am I hiding? So a big part of shadow work that we're going to talk about, and maybe I can just start by sort of defining what the shadow is, and we can go into how to work with it. A big part of shadow work is coming into relationship with, or starting to make contact with, the hidden and unknown parts of yourself. Okay. So the shadow is a psychological concept that was created by Mr. Carl Jung, who's a very well-known Swiss psychologist. Just show of hands, who has heard of Carl Jung? All right, bam, everybody, great. That makes my work a heck of a lot easier. So it's a concept that was created by Jung quite a long time ago. And I'm just going to give you the importance of why shadow work, I think, and why shadow work Carl Jung thought is so relevant. So at a lecture in 1937 at Yale, Jung said, the new man must bear the burden of the shadow consciously, for such a man knows that whatever is wrong in the world is in himself. Right? Whatever is wrong in the world is in himself. And if he only learns to deal with his own shadow, he has done something real for the world. He has succeeded in shouldering at least an infinitesimal part of the gigantic unsolved social problems of our day. So just sit with that for a moment, right? Here's one of the most profound psychologists, I think. Maybe you don't agree with that, but a lot of people would agree with that, that here's one of the most, well-learned, well-thought psychologists really saying to confront your shadow, to start to learn about the unknown parts of yourself, is a worthy endeavor. That in doing so, you've done something for the world, that you've done something for society, for social good. Now, why is that? Why is that? Well, because in many ways, the shadow is the unconscious accumulation of everything that you've disowned, everything that you've rejected, everything that you fear and dislike about yourself. So it's kind of the hurt locker of your psyche, right? It's kind of the hurt locker of your psyche. It's where you store the things that you don't like. It's where you store the things that you needed to get rid of in order to protect yourself as a child. And the shadow is the part of you that essentially gets in the way and sabotages your goals, your aims, your direction, your clarity, right? So when you are sabotaging, you are acting from this place of shadow. You're acting from this unknown part, right? Because most of the time, you're not consciously messing things up in your life, right? You're not like, I really want to pick a fight with my partner. I really want to sabotage this work project. You're not consciously doing that, right? There's something unconscious moving within you that is causing that sabotage. So the shadow is everything that you've rejected, everything that you don't want to be in contact with. So your insecurities, right? Your fears, the things that you don't want other people to know about you, right? How many of you have gotten into a relationship and start hiding things about yourself? Just show of hands. You've gotten into a relationship, you start hiding things, right? Or you start acting in a way to bolster or embellish certain parts of yourself. How many of you guys have done that before? Yeah. So in many ways, this is the shadow at play. The shadow is the accumulation of our inferiorities, right? So maybe you grew up in an environment where you were verbally or emotionally abused, right? So I'll just share a personal story. So I grew up in a household. My parents got divorced when I was 3. They got remarried to other people when I was 6. And then they both had a daughter when I was 7. And then they both had a son when I was 10 and 11. So I grew up between these 2 identical family systems. And my stepdad as a child was pretty rough. You know, he's pretty verbally abusive, pretty emotionally abusive, sometimes physically abusive. And so I grew up in this environment where when I did something wrong, I was punished verbally, emotionally, and sometimes physically. I was told I was, you know, can I swear on this? Is that okay?
Sure can.
Yeah. So, you know, I grew up being told, like, you're a stupid piece of shit. You're never going to fucking amount to anything. You know, you're just a failure. You're just a, you know, you're just a dumb kid. So I would hear things like this all the time. And what that did was a few things. One, it taught me, that lying was the best way to adapt, to save myself from punishment. Okay. Number one. And number two, it developed this really deep fear that I was never good enough, right? How many of you guys have grown up in an environment where you felt like you were never good enough? No matter what you did, no matter how well you performed, no matter what good grades you got or how well you did on the sports team, or, you know, how good looking the person was that you're dating that you brought home, it's just like nothing was ever good enough. So what it started to do, oh, and the other thing that it did, the third thing that it did, was it taught me that anger was dangerous. Anger was dangerous because when I did something wrong, my stepfather's anger would come at me verbally, emotionally. He was very loud. He was a very big man, sometimes physically. And so I learned to disown and disconnect from my own anger. I saw it as a bad thing. So when I got older in life, my anger started to either erupt or implode, erupt or implode. I would either implode and direct that anger at myself. I'm such a piece of shit. What the fuck is wrong with me? Why can't I? I carried on that legacy of what my stepfather told me, or it would explode. I'd go get into bar fights, right? I'd go pick fights with guys in order to get a release from some of that anger that I was carrying around. And in my relationship, I never let the women that I date see my anger. I never let them see it, because that was a threat. I was so scared to set boundaries, to speak up for myself. And so instead of really being transparent and honest and forthcoming, my shadow was in play. I wouldn't get upset in my relationship, and I would go get my needs met somewhere else. So I started to lie, I started to cheat, I was unfaithful. So there's massive benefit in starting to face this part of ourselves, right? Because this is what leads to a deeper sense of wholeness, a deeper sense of clarity. Not only that, and this is the last thing I'm going to say, and I'm going to maybe just pause and open up to some questions, because I've just given you turned on the fire hose and just gave you a shit ton of information. The last thing I'm going to say is, how many of you guys know and feel that there is unmet and untapped potential within you? Show of hands. Potential that you haven't accessed, right? Where is that potential?